Hello, my name is Beth Dixon, and this is a video series based on Vicki Borlaug's PowerPoint presentation on range versus standard deviation. During this series, we will work an example and have students make a decision based on the statistics gathered. I wish to thank Mrs. Borlaug for allowing me to use her PowerPoint to create this video. And we're picking up and finding the statistics on Company B from Part 1 of this series. So you may need to watch Part 1 of this series to understand where we're at. But right now we have Company B, and we want to pick up and find the sample size of Company B. So we want to count the number of, N is our sample size, and we want to count the number of data we have. And we'll let the magic of the computer do that for us. And we know our sample size is 14. Next, I will look at the sample mean. Remember that the formula is x bar equals the sum of x divided by n. And here is the list of data values, and the sum for this data values is 154. So the sum divided by the number, which is 14, is 154 divided by 14, gives us x bar equals 11. So the mean, or x bar, is equal to 11. Or using technology, we will use stat, then choose the edit menu, and under edit is the word edit, and that will give us the screen we see, and we should type in all of the numbers. In this case, Ms. Borlaug chose to put them again in list 1. Notice that you will not see all the numbers listed here. That's what the ETC represents, is that not all of the data is seen. Because we're clipping and using clip art to put this out, we cannot capture all of the numbers, but they are there, so you want to type in each number separately as represented by the blocks on the graph, and remember that you will not see all the numbers as they're pictured on this screen. When your numbers are in and you've checked them for accuracy, you want to press Stat and then move over to Calculate, and then choose one var stats, and when that is on the home screen, you want to tell the calculator which list our numbers are in. In our case, that's list 1 again. So you'll press second and then list 1. Once that is on your home screen, you will press enter, and that'll give us our results. Remember that we're looking for the mean, which is represented by x bar, and this gives us the sample mean of 11. So we'll type in, or put in our 11, and next we'll go on to the range. The range for this data set can be found by subtracting the high minus the low. With a high of 14 and the lowest value of 8, that gives us 14 minus 8, or a range of 6. And typing and writing that in, we can look lastly at, for this data set, to find the sample standard deviation. Again, I will show you how to calculate the sample standard deviation by hand first. If I'm doing this, I write the formula down first as my guide. And the formula is, for the variance, s squared equals the sum of x minus x bar squared divided by n minus 1. And with technology, I'll bring back the table that I used to calculate the sample mean by hand, as well as the work for the sample mean. And next, I'll label the two columns. The first column, I'll calculate the difference between each x value and the sample mean. That's the x minus the x bar. Then in the next column, I'll take that value that I just calculated in the second column and square it. And that'll complete this part of the formula down here. And then lastly, I will take the sum of it, or I guess not lastly because there are a couple of steps after that, but then I will take the sum of that. So first, let's go back and remember, because the mean is 11, x minus x bar takes each x value of the data and subtracts 11. So 8 minus 11, 10 minus 11, and so forth. And that gives us each of these, and by the magic of the PowerPoint, we have the numbers filled in. Then the next column squares each of those numbers. And again, I'm going to let it just fill in. You can pause and look at that if you need to, but I'm just going to move on. Then remember, look at the notation here. It's the sum of x minus x bar squared. So we will sum all of that up. If you're struggling with doing this by hand, there are better videos that I have out that will show you how to calculate the standard deviation by hand. This sum gives us 24. We'll divide 24 by n minus 1. Our n is 14, minus 1 is 13. That is the variance. Since we're looking for the standard deviation, we'll take the square root of 24 divided by 13, which gives us 1.3587, and that is our standard deviation. Again, please follow the rounding rules that your teacher has set up. Miss Borlaug, and thus I, will round to 4 decimal places. This gives us the sample standard deviation of 1.3587, and that concludes finding the sample standard deviation by hand. And aren't you loving these ORs? Because we're going to show you how to do it with technology next. And again, we've got our data in our list by going Stat, Edit, and then under the Edit menu, choosing Edit. Typing our data into List 1, or using the data that we already typed in to find the sample mean, and the one variable stats in List 1, as we did before, and getting that same screen where we picked up x bar. If we will look at SX, S being the sample standard deviation, and X just telling it it's on these X values, then we can see that the sample standard deviation is 1.3587, again just rounded to 4 decimal places. Choose the method. You can choose any method, but choose the method that your teacher allows, and use the technology if your teacher allows it, because doing it by hand does open you up for some arithmetic errors. And again, isn't technology wonderful? And to sum up, n equals 14, x bar equals 11, the range is 6, and the standard deviation is 1.3587. Now we can go back and compare Company A and Company B. And note that both samples, note the same sample size for both samples. Now, the B simply asks, the B question of our list of questions is, both companies have a mean value of, and the answer, of course, is 11. Both companies have a mean value of 11. Question C. Based on the graphs, if you wanted parts with values of 11 or close to 11, which company should be selected to supply the parts? And again, let's look at the graphs, not any of the summary data, but the graphs. If we want to be close to 11, looking at this graph, look how far or how close the values are to 11. Then look at Company B. Here's 11. How many parts are at 11 or close to 11? So which company would you choose? Well, Company B. Why? Because the sample from Company B has more values at or close to the desired value of 11. She's not asking here for a crazy question, and most of the time you just want to answer it as simply as possible. I like the phrase, keep it simple, students. We don't use the other word that generally goes with that. So keep it simple. Answer just what is asked. Why do we like company B? Because more of the parts are close to 11. Question D. Which company makes products that is more spread out from the mean value of 11? Well, again, just looking at the graph, that would be company A. Do the range values measure this difference in spread between company A and company B? Well, the range values are both 6, so that answer is no, because it doesn't tell us the difference in where the values are located. And why is that? Well, the calculation for the range for company A took 14 minus 8. The range value for company B took 14 minus 8, but it did not take into consideration, the range did not, any of the other values. The calculation for the range only uses the high and low values. It does not use all of the data values. Do the standard deviation values measure this difference in spread between company A and company B? Look at the standard deviations. Are they different? And the answer is yes. And why are they different? Because the calculation for the standard deviation does use all of the data values. Remember that when we calculated it by hand, we calculated it using every one of the data values. Standard deviation is a measure which includes the distance from the mean squared for all of the data values. And to conclude this video, I will stop on this screen and you can pause and try one on your own that's very similar to the one we just did to give you some practice. If you'd like the answers, you're welcome to stop by here in the Math Lab and we will be glad to help you with this. I hope this helped explain the difference between the range and the standard deviation and how the standard deviation can be helped to use and to make decisions based on to base some decisions on. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.